Welcome back. I hope that brainstorming attributes of effective teachers helped prime you for some of the attributes you hope to emulate as you communicate your research. In this video, we are going to explore the value of communicating research with the public, as well as venues you might use to disseminate your research. When you're in a research environment, you may be able to effectively communicate with your peers with little effort. You might have success at producing and publishing academic papers without ever needing to communicate beyond a group of disciplinary peers. So why then, might you ask, should you communicate your research with the public? There are both pragmatic and ethical reasons you might want to share your research with a broader audience. First, there are educational reasons to share your research. The more the public can grasp the impacts of your research, the more informed their decisions are. There is a lot of misinformation prevalent in the news cycle. There is also significant public distrust in research. The better the public understands the processes and methodologies applied to research, the more they can apply those critical thinking skills to other problems they face. Additionally, you were once a member of the public. Something inspired you to pursue research and academic interests. It benefits the research environment to continue to bring in a fresh perspective, especially by folks who may not have a background in your discipline. Finally, much research is funded through taxpayer dollars. The public deserves to benefit from the research they're paying for. There are also benefits to you as a researcher. Communicating with folks outside your discipline can help you practice communication skills. It also benefits you as a researcher to step outside your comfort zone and communicate your research more broadly, to understand broader implications of your research and find potential collaborators. It allows you to promote your research, which can give you more power in policy and public issues, including funding. While on the topic of funding, your job may depend on your ability to effectively communicate what you're doing with a non-expert. Whether you rely on publicly funded grants or private industry, it is quite likely that you'll find yourself in a situation where the individuals deciding to fund you are not experts in the field you are. Explaining what you're doing and why it matters is a critical skill to ensuring that your projects remain supported. While the web has enabled greater dissemination of information, it has also increased the flow of disinformation. Through this, there are conflicting reports on virtually all research, and facts are treated as opinions. This is a problem that impacts all parts of our lives, from political decisions to personal choices and everything in between. On this slide, I've included an infographic from Pew Research Center that shows how public confidence in numerous institutions, including medical scientists, and journalists, is declining. Confidence in research has real-world consequences. This map from a study published in September 2020 surprisingly shows an increase in participants agreeing that vaccines are effective, important, and safe between November 2015 and November 2018. I suspect that you would see a reversal in these trends if the study were to incorporate the pandemic to present. But it is important to note that these beliefs influence health decisions that can impact entire communities. I've included a couple of screen captures from NPR and then an ex-post from NPR about the same story. You can see that the original article made it clear that this was an experiment in mice. Then NPR posted it to X without the mice part. So this particular Twitter handle, Just Says in Mice, picked up that and called them out. Unfortunately, this is extremely common. NPR actually did a pretty good job of noting it in the title, just not the tweet. News media will draw conclusions about human implications of research in mice without any evidence that the treatment will have the same effect on humans. It might be an indicator that something similar could happen, right? Like, that's why these studies are conducted in the first place, but then trials always go to humans before a treatment is approved. Just as in that example, news often tries to be sensational. They're trying to grab readers' attention, so they focus on novel and exciting research. The thing about novel and exciting research is that it is often later proven wrong or unreproducible. The news can mischaracterize stories, and researchers can fuel that as well by promoting their research in an overly exciting way. Often, how research reaches the news is researchers communicate to a journalist, or they just publish their work in a journal and it gets picked up and made into a story. The news media can then oversimplify results and make the research out to be more than it is. The more directly you can communicate your research, the more control you have over the way it is portrayed. It also helps make it more easily readable from the outset so that reporters are able to understand the value and outputs of your research before they draw unsupported conclusions. I read the news, I guess many of you do too. The news can be a valuable tool to learn about new research, but as researchers, I would advise you to be careful and try to understand the source of the information before you take it at face value. A little closer to home, your job will require effectively communicating your research. Your boss may not have your level of expertise. You are going to need to explain the rationale for why you are doing what you are doing. Research costs money, employees are expensive, and companies tend to look out for shareholders. You'll need to explain why your research makes financial sense and will improve the output of a company. Additionally, you may have coworkers who are not experts. Someone coming in fresh out of an undergraduate degree program may not know everything they need to for a successful start at a company. In fact, it would be unusual if they did. Simultaneously, while technician level employees may be able to do repetitive tasks, if they know why they're doing something, they may be more motivated and able to provide input on the process. In the workplace, you'll need to justify your decisions in terms everyone will understand. This will lend credibility to your work. How is someone supposed to make informed decisions about your research when they don't understand it? It will also increase opportunities for participation and better allow for new talent and ideas to enter your research arena. Additionally, should you remain in academia, publication and citations are valuable tools to gain promotion and tenure. The more broadly folks can understand your research, the more likely they are to use it and cite it in their own work. It is beneficial to your professional development to communicate as broadly as you can. Just by talking about communication, we've explored a variety of venues one might use to communicate research, like news and social media. But there are more venues you might consider. I like to break these into a few different modes: formal, social, and casual. What I mean by formal is professional or scholarly communication. Think about academic journals, company memos, things like that. Be aware some of the scholarly publications are intended for broad audiences like science or nature, while others are discipline specific. By social communication, I mean communicating on social media, at a party, or a conference. You want to sound like you know what you're talking about in front of other people, especially those you may not be too familiar with. Finally, by casual, I mean communicating with people who are very comfortable with you and you are comfortable with, like family or close friends. There are overlaps in these categories, so some venues might fall into more than one category, and you'll need to determine the situational context to decide how you're going to communicate. For venues, let's start with person-to-person communication. The communication venue that you probably started with when you first began to communicate. There are contexts under which you'll probably use this venue in all three modes: formal, social, and casual. Then you have websites, blogs, vlogs, and social media. These are or have potential to be very broad in their audience, but are also platforms that can provide information of various quality. News media is intentionally large in audience and can vary from casual to formal. Finally, there are scholarly publications. Generally, these are pretty formal, depending on where you are communicating and the mode with which you are communicating. You'll want to adjust your strategies and the terminology you use. Up next is an activity where you'll start to identify some potential venues for publishing your research. I'd like for you to think about the target audience and how the venue might impact that audience, and what you hope the audience gains from learning about your research.